My name is Emily Abusisi, and I'm our Director of Programs for 11th grade. And Anthony Ciliberto, you're our guest. You're the Assistant Director for Fraternity and Sorority Life at Villanova University and a member of Lambda Chi Alpha Fraternity.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
So today we're just going to go over, I have a couple questions for you.
Sure.
And then I'm hoping to open it up to our audience for any questions that they may have.
Sure.
Awesome. So first, pretty simple, where are you from, and what are some of what were some of your interests growing up?
Yeah, so I'm from Glenside, Pennsylvania, so about an hour and a half from Lancaster. Growing up, I feel like I tried a lot of different things. Tried sports, not my thing. My claim to fame was like my CYO basketball record in 5th and 6th grade. And then I think I really started getting involved in high school with volunteer work. So very heavily involved in Key Club in high school, which I think translated into my college experience, and where I am today, my personal volunteering experience.
Very cool. And
yeah.
Could you expand on what you mean with the work that you did, or I guess your experience in college?
Sure. So in college, I was heavily involved. I was a member, or currently I'm a member of Lambda Chi Alpha, and very service-oriented organization, giving back to Feeding America.
Okay.
So trying to do food drives and things like that in the Lancaster area.
Awesome.
Heavily involved in orientation. Did orientation for 3 or 4 years. Student government, and then also did Circle K, which is Key Club's affiliate in college.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
You went to Millersville University.
I did, yes.
How did you find Millersville, and why did you choose to go there?
So I had 2 of my high school mentors and favorite teachers went to Millersville, and my parents told me I had to stay in state. As a 17-year-old, I was like, let me go to West Virginia or Arizona State, and my parents were like, no. So applied, toured it, loved it, toured it 3 times, and just fell in love every time.
Very cool. And it seems like the Key Club connection was very transferable. But
yes.
I'm curious, did you know that you wanted to get involved with Greek life? Did you know that you wanted to be an orientation leader? Like, where did you see yourself fitting into those other pieces?
Sure. So I knew I was interested in joining a fraternity. I have 2 older sisters. So growing up in a very female-dominated house, I was seeking that kind of brotherhood aspect that a lot of my peers had. So I was that eager joiner that messaged the orientation leader before. We had like fake Facebook for orientation back then. So he was also a member of Lambda Chi, and that's how I got connected. And then through orientation, I really looked at him as a mentor. And started going out to recruitment events, and it kind of just sparked from there, and he actually became my big brother in the fraternity. So a lot of very salient moments for me early on.
I also met my big sister through a class on campus.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So orientation leader, Lambda Chi, that connection, I love it. I love how every piece connects. Thinking about the work that you do now, when you were an undergrad at Millersville, orientation leader in Lambda Chi, it's very clear that you were service-oriented and wanted to be involved in your community, but did you see yourself pursuing FSL as a career?
No.
So how did we get here?
Right, that is a great question. I was thinking about that on my drive here. I didn't think I would go into fraternity and sorority life advising. I took a gap year between undergrad and grad school because I didn't know if I wanted to do my master's in public health or higher ed, and had some really raw and honest conversations with some mentors who worked at Millersville at the time on how do I get to where I want to be / how do I be you? And decided that higher ed was the right pathway to go with a lens in violence prevention. So went that route. Did my graduate assistantship in health promotion at Ohio University, and focused on healthy relationships, masculinity work, and violence prevention, power-based personal violence. And that was my first job out of grad school. And then there was an opening at Tulane in fraternity and sorority life that married the 2. So it was an assistant director role that focused on prevention work within the fraternity and sorority life community.
Wow.
I was
this is perfect.
This makes sense. Because I was also advising my undergraduate chapter at the time and the East Carolina chapter on their advisory team at the time. So I was like, let me just mold my two loves together.
And I see how that ties into your work now as
Yeah.
you oversee the Interfraternity Council at Villanova,
Yes.
as well as the Health and Wellbeing Initiative's Communication and Marketing.
Yes.
Very cool.
Plethora of things.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Isn't that higher ed in a nutshell?
Yes, sure is.
So when you were at Tulane,
Yeah.
seeing as that is not where you're from,
Yep.
how did you find yourself like integrating yourself into the community? What were some strategies that you used to really make sure that you got that buy-in from your students as well?
Yeah, I really need to push myself out of my comfort zone. I went away for grad school with the hope to grow as a person and professionally, and then wanted to translate that again into my professional career and just roll the dice and move to somewhere I've never been as a young professional. So I really immersed myself, got connected with a roommate who's still one of my greatest friends today, and then joined an adult kickball league.
Whoa.
Yeah, so out of my comfort zone. But I met some of the greatest people. People that officiated my wedding, people that attended my wedding. There's milestones that we're going through together. So it was really transformational. I met my wife when I was there.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was really great. And I think it's just, you have to push yourself sometimes out of the comfort zone and into the uncomfortable.
I especially love that you joined a kickball league after mentioning that you are not an athlete.
Yeah.
I think you're an athlete
Yeah.
now.
Thank you. I don't know if my team would say that.
Well, kickball's hard and every aspect matters.
Yeah.
That's
I played
so funny.
far outfield for a reason.
Hey, it's the team effort,
Yeah,
right?
right. Brought the vibes.
So how did we go from Tulane back to Pennsylvania? Is that something you knew you wanted to come back into this community? How did we get there?
Yeah, so I think it was just the right moment at the right time with the position. I was at an impasse in my career where I needed to grow. I was seeking growth and certain things in that. So I wasn't able to supervise just with the structure at Tulane, so I now have that at Villanova, and it offered me that. I also want to be closer to family. Family is really important to me. My sister was going through pregnancy with my niece at the time, so that was really important to be here to watch her grow up as well. And then it had been 6 years since I had lived in Pennsylvania at that point, so we made the move personally and professionally. And for my wife, she'd always lived in Louisiana, so huge adjustment for her. So it's been great though, and we really value, like, we're 15 minutes away from my siblings, so it's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I really appreciate that you and I both have a very similar background in terms of really investing into your community wherever you are, as I'm not originally from Pennsylvania, but as soon as I moved here, I reached out to your alma mater, ironically enough, and found a way to volunteer there.
Good.
And what I noticed in my time at Millersville is that and not just Millersville, other universities as well, is there's been a decline in student engagement. I was wondering if you're noticing that as well.
Yes, I think that our students at Villanova are highly involved with leadership and leadership titles. And it's about, right now we're in a gray area of what does involvement look like and commitment look like to the organizations that you're invested in. So I think there is a decline in student engagement when it comes to actively being a contributing member. So right now we're reframing kind of what we do and the programs we offer and the structure in which we offer them, because I think what I have realized is that we need to focus really on the interpersonal aspects of connection, and getting back to the basics of relationship building, and being intentional with the work that we're doing. And why do I want this leadership role, and what does it mean when I take that on?
Where do you see organizations like Attollo, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've been connected with us for quite some time. You used to volunteer with us when you were living a little bit closer during our founding, which thank you very much
of course.
for continuing to be involved. But seeing as we work with 11th and 12th graders in high school, and we're going to be sending them off to colleges like Villanova, how can we as mentors with this age group help prepare and shape them so that we increase student engagement when they get to college?
Yeah, I think my biggest piece of advice would be around helping them figure out who they are and what they're passionate about and pursuing those. And I think being intentional when they get to college about what they want to be involved in. You don't need to be involved in everything. You giving your time and energy to the things that you actually care about speaks volumes about what you actually want to do and will help you moving forward. And really, I define as a change maker in the college world, because you are retaining that membership or affiliation with whatever organization it is for an extended period of time.
Now, thinking back to my undergraduate years, definitely one, wish I heard that sooner. And two, I remember feeling obligated to make whatever leadership position I was in my entire life. And just in my advising experience within the fraternity and sorority life, it very easily can become your entire life. So this is more of like a two-part question.
Okay.
For your students, what advice do you have for those who are committed to the role and not just the title, and finding balance? And then how do you personally do that, seeing as I'm sure you're the person that your IFC calls when they're in trouble?
Sure. So I'll do the second part first.
Okay.
So for me, still learning, right? I think I'm leaning into the imperfect parts of myself more, and it being okay to have balance, right? I throw myself into work a lot because it is a comfort area. And I am really passionate about that. But you have to schedule intentionally time for activities and hobbies, or find new hobbies, especially when you get into your 30s. So I think for me, it's the work-life balance and also having accountability partners in that to make sure that I do have good balance. We have a really solid team and work structure where we are not afraid to call each other out in the most respectful way about, like, you have been here a few nights this week, maybe take some time off and use that flex time. Or use your time wisely moving forward. So still learning boundaries with work life. For my students, I always share, like, you as a person is the identity. The other piece is not who you are and does not define you. It is a part of who you are, and it is as much as you would like to make it, but it should not be your whole identity. Sometimes we need a org-free weekend, right, where we do not have meetings or engagements or responsibilities for that organization so we can have a reset. I have seen in the past few years a really big shift in college students, especially on leadership roles. Burnout is happening a lot quicker because they aren't feeling support or seeking support from their peers, so they are taking on everything themselves, which we have a lot of strategic conversations about right now, about how are we prioritizing ourselves and our mental and physical health, and also how are we having difficult conversations when we do need to ask for help and support, because you're not the only leader in your organization. You have an entire executive team, and it's not your responsibility to do their jobs, right? And if they're not doing it, failure is okay, and failure is a learning opportunity. One of my favorite takeaways from a book I recently read, Think Again by Adam Grant, is being wrong is not a threat, it's an opportunity to learn. So really leaning into that with our students, and also our motto in our office that we learned from a conference is do less better. You don't have to do everything, right? Like, focus on the things that matter and that you care about, and put your time and energy into it to make it the best it can be.
I am definitely taking some of those nuggets and throwing them into my advising group chat. A theme that I noticed between your response for both how students can find balance as well as how you find balance is collaboration. And working with other people on your executive board or other organizations. How, for the student side of things, which is very applicable to other areas of life, how do you take that first step when there's, fear of, like, oh, is this the right thing? I don't know this person. I don't even know if they have something that can help me. Like, how do I overcome that?
I think I take two approaches, right? Depending on the student, whether you're more extrovert or introverted. One, if you're not feeling as comfortable in doing like a direct reach out or like a cold call, do your research, right? Figure out what makes the most sense and how the relationship doesn't need to be transactional, but intentional. And if it is going to be transactional, make sure it's transactional for the both of you in a positive way, and that is meaningful at the same time. If you are extrovert, I am happy to e-connect students with either faculty, staff, or their peers, but really do encourage them to take the lead on that and reach out, because you don't know what that could spark. And recently, one of our new IFC presidents, who's also on our IFC executive team, attended a leadership conference, which was very transformational for him, and came back with the goal of collaboration. Went to our CBFO, or culturally based fraternal organization, meeting, brought them pizza, and was like, I want to learn how we can engage more and better and intentionally. And that has really been successful for them.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I understand how big of a deal that is between those two councils, because there tends to be tension on different campuses.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do want to go back. You said an interaction doesn't always have to be transactional. It can be intentional. When I'm thinking of, reaching out to people, I'm always thinking of like, okay, well, what can I offer them? Would you be able to expand on the intentional side when there isn't always something that you can give back, but you still need to receive something?
Sure. I think it is understanding your why on wanting to reach out and going back to that multiple times throughout the process internally and having that conversation and that dialogue with one another. And I wanted to reach out to you because I find this really valuable about what your organization does, or I want to learn more about this organization. I'm very big into peer mentoring, and really I'm trying to build that culture within our IFC groups, because some of them do things really well and some of them have, that is the other's area of growth. So how do we leverage those relationships as undergraduates and fraternity men to excel and propel the fraternal movement? And it doesn't have to be like, you give this, I give this. It can be, I just want to learn, and you can help me do that.
Okay. Yeah. Thinking about a theme in our office right now, which is very in line with reaching out, networking. How do you receive assistance, especially for students, maybe like our rising seniors who are interested in a specific university and we have an alum who goes there?
Sure.
Double texting, sending a follow-up email. That seems to be a really big barrier for our high school students.
Okay.
Any advice on how to encourage or reframe that following up is okay, even when you don't receive an initial response?
Yeah, I think understanding that everyone is in a different stage of their life, right? And people are busy and miss things all of the time, so they may have not seen that text or seen that email. So following up in an appropriate amount of time is really great. I would say my rule of thumb is if you don't hear back within 72 hours or potentially a week, depending on what you're looking for in that relationship, it's okay to follow up. And it's like, hey, just sending a friendly reminder, would love to connect, right? And keeping it energetic and enthusiastic, because I feel like sometimes the trap that our students fall into is if it comes off as transactional or pushy. But making sure that you are framing how your communication comes off digitally is really important. I use exclamation points all of the time because I'm like, I don't want
I'm not
someone,
alone.
yeah, like I read into like when people put periods at the end of things, or like, okay, period. I'm like,
yep.
All right, let me reframe this. But that's just like my internal dialogue. So I think this reaching out with enthusiasm and going back to that why is really important. And if it's for a genuine reason, follow-up, I think, is very appropriate.
Okay. I appreciate you saying that because I feel like with our students, sometimes they need to hear it from someone else.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to replay this the next time someone's concerned about the double text.
Yeah, I have also learned that from our students this year at conferences. They're like, you were right. And I was like,
yes.
you. I don't need the validation. However, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. How do you currently, in your role, find opportunities to collaborate? Obviously, you have your team within fraternity and sorority life, different people overseeing different councils, which is great, but how do you continue collaboration within Villanova and also with organizations just in your community, not in the university?
I think I recognize I can't do this work alone. And that is something that I feel like in higher education we struggle with, because there's an internal feeling that you have to outperform the next person and take all of that weight yourself. But the best outcomes come from cross-functional collaboration. So I try to model that for our students by being an active contributor in spaces, volunteering for things that I'm both passionate about, but also great to make connections that I might not already have or potentially already have. Specifically in my work around health and well-being, I can't do prevention work alone, and it takes a village to do that and to create change. So creating strategic partnerships is something that I really value. And I think for our students, they are starting to see that also can't do that alone, whether it's collaboration amongst the internal team, right, and asking for help and support internally, or creating committee systems, or stepping out of their comfort zones and reaching out to folks that aren't involved in the Office of Fraternity and Sorority Life, because yes, we can connect you with resources and we are a resource, but we are not the end-all be-all. And I think that's really important, because I'm not a content expert in everything, and I own that. And sometimes the word expert, like when people say expert, I'm like, not me. But thank you.
Thank you.
So connecting them very intentionally is important, especially when it comes to work that, I might not be as familiar with, or our team might not be as familiar with.
How do you handle all of the different policies, procedures, ways of communication? And I guess just to give context, when you're overseeing an interfraternity council, you have Villanova's rules and expectations. And then each of those organizations have their own nationals or international headquarters that have their own policies. Like, how do you manage all of that? And then when you're collaborating with people outside, like, that's just so many pieces. How do you keep track?
Yeah. Right now we have set some expectations for ourselves when it comes to communication with all of the different stakeholders. I make it a point to at least meet bi-semesterly with representatives from each of our headquarters partners, just so that we have that connection. And sometimes they have pieces that I don't, and sometimes I have pieces that they don't. So connecting the dots is really important. So that is one way we do that. Internally, I think it's really about just understanding where people are coming from and where they're at, and making sure that we are meaningfully connecting about what is happening and changes. My biggest thing that I talk about in my expectations when I work with students and staff is transparency. I have no reason to hide what is going on, or changes or policies or rules, procedures, anything like that, because it's not benefiting either of us if we are being secretive about things.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So my last question before opening it up to our audience. So thank you again for being a guest on our professional development series.
Of course.
Outside of the almost like given or expected opportunities that you might have, such as, Greek Leadership Association conferences, etc., how else do you find ways to better yourself and improve yourself, like personally as well as in your career?
Yeah. I currently have taken up reading again,
Okay.
which has been great, both for professional growth and personal pleasure, which, like, getting into reading is a journey. So that way, and I think that has been really salient. And I also look for opportunities that aren't really connected to the work I'm currently doing, niche-wise. So thinking through, how do I capitalize on things like strengths training? Or I just saw this really cool opportunity and started looking into it about Lego Serious play facilitation.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really interesting concepts.
Like adult parallel play, or?
So it's how to, like, utilize engagement with, like, building Legos and creative mindsets in your facilitation and leadership practices.
Whoa.
Yeah, I just saw the opportunity from someone that I used to work with at Tulane on LinkedIn, and I was like, great, Googling right now. And now I'm really interested in it, and I think that it's an opportunity if I explore it myself, or bring it back to our team if this is something that multiple people want. I think that's also something that I'm really engaged in, is like, what are other people doing, and how can I learn from them? Because I can't be at every conference or everything. And then just staying up to date with trends and things of that nature, both in the field and externally, to see how they play a factor.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I might need you to send me that Lego
link.
Yes,
for sure. I saw it and I was like, this sounds really cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you for answering my questions. I would love to open it up to anyone else.
Sure.
Jojo.
Yeah.
Yes, with the work that you do and how much you get to connect with people, freshmen that are just leaving high school and going to college, what do you think is like the biggest barrier that they encounter within that first year, and what do you guys do to kind of bridge that gap and kind of help them?
Yeah, I think it is just the adjustment and acclimation to the college setting wherever they are, I think is the biggest barrier. I feel like universities throw a lot into the freshman experience, so sometimes it feels really overwhelming. So making sure to have those intentional conversations and connect with students, answer their questions about if it's fraternity or sorority related, or connecting with them when they're on campus, be like, we are a resource for you, and like giving out business cards or just telling them where our office is. I think that is one thing. I think our first year students also want to be involved in everything. You go to an involvement fair and there's 350 plus organizations and you put your name down for 215 of them, you're going to get a lot of emails.
Yes, you are. Yes, you
and
are.
that's also really overwhelming. So sharing that it's okay to be mindful. And I think that Villanova does a really great job with their orientation program in having peer mentors help them connect the dots and figure out what they're really invested in. And it is a welcome week style. So it's 4 days, which I also think allows for community connection. I think students come in not wanting to show fear. So having the ability to make connections early before the academic year starts is really imperative.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I got so many questions, but organization that's coming to mind, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with it.
Sure.
So I'm sure you're very familiar with it. Is CASA.
Yeah.
Just because of their work that they've been doing for a long time.
Mhm.
So could you just speak to what CASA does, and
Yeah.
how it impacts students?
Sure. CASA is a huge part of the Villanova experience for underrepresented students. They provide academic support, peer engagement, peer mentorship, and are doing a lot of great work. I actually just had a call with a colleague in CASA about the work we're doing around masculinity, especially as we see a cliff in higher education with male-identified individuals attending college, and how do we build engagement in those spaces. So they're really thinking outside of the box and are really innovative in their approaches, and I think our students find a home there. And that is a trusted resource that we can also have a really great partnership, especially for our culturally based groups, where they may feel like a stronger affinity to that space than the Office of Fraternity and Sorority program, and bridging the gap.
My follow-up question to that is, what is Villanova doing to engage more males? And I'm asking really for us.
Yeah.
Every organization probably in Lancaster is also struggling
Mhm.
to engage males in high school.
Yep.
With additional educational enrichment programs like ours.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering if there's any things that is very specific that you guys are doing that we can also adopt.
Yeah, I think that we are in a think tank right now on what that looks like. I think there's a lot of programs that are labeled leadership development that are appealing, and also leadership, I have noticed, has become a buzzword to our students. So how are we reframing engagement to be around personal and professional development and growth? And also thinking long term, there's also a shift in the mindset of the students that I work with in I'm here for the long term, right? I'm thinking about my long-term career. So how do we leverage networking pieces into that and mentorship both on the peer level and the faculty and staff level? Right now, planning a cohort model, so it's more an intimate for male students through a grant from the It's On Us PA program around exploring masculinity as an identity, as well as what does healthy relationships look like? What does showing up in spaces look like? In terms of the intersectionality of identity and prevention work. So capitalizing on the more intimate settings and understanding that the students that want to be there are going to be there and that you're making a difference. It's a challenge. And I think that sometimes we have to recognize that it's a challenge and ask for support. So we are doing a lot of benchmarking right now as well in terms of male engagement. Yeah, for sure.
Terry, you had a question.
Yeah, sorry. So I think Greek life is often seen as a monolith, especially in this area, because it's just not as big as it is in many other places.
Yeah.
But each Greek organization is very different from each other. Greek life from school to school looks remarkably different.
Sure.
So what advice would you give to a high school student who's thinking about going into Greek life or trying to make that decision about whether that is for them or not.
Yeah.
Especially if they're coming from a community like this where, you know, they're not seeing it out every day, and maybe their only engagement is like Gallon Rush talks.
That's real.
Seeing all of that, which
That's real.
is
Yes.
a very hyper-specific
Yeah.
set of Greek life.
Yeah. I think capitalizing on the fact that not every university is an SEC school that has that culture when it comes to fraternity and sorority life is really important. Oh, TikTok. But I also think doing your research, right? I think that what I would love students to get back to, if they are interested in pursuing it at any level, is doing research and finding what value sets align with your own. And then meeting those people when you get to campus, whether it's through community events or individual organization events, and seeing if those connections are there with the values and belief systems that you have, and that's something that you would like to pursue. When it comes to organizations, I think research is really important to understand, like, are you connected to the philanthropy? What do you want to get out of the experience? Right now, the world of fraternity and sorority life is thinking a lot about, like, how do we capitalize on the experience, but also give them what they want in terms of career development and support. So the credentialing piece, like, what are organizations offering to students? So there's the research part, but then there's the people part, right? You are joining people, and people want to join people that they like and can get along with and feel connected to. I think making a genuine decision for yourself, and if it's not the right avenue, that's okay too. But find what is. I think getting involved is very important, whether it's in fraternity and sorority life or outside of it.
Terry, I really appreciate that question. That
Yeah.
was awesome.
Yeah.
Mar?
You talked about going through different communities and being able to contribute and dive into that. For students that are going to, maybe you're from Pennsylvania, you're going to California, or somewhere far, what's the advice that you would give them to kind of acclimate themselves?
Sure. I think capitalize on the orientation programs, making connections with peers that may be out-of-state students as well. There's typically an office or a person, depending on the institution, who would be able to connect folks with each other, whether it's through social engagements or just by way of email. So I think it's, again, stepping out of the comfort zone and advocating for yourself and what you need, and trying to meet new people, whether they're from in-state or out-of-state, and realizing what connection you want to make.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is your approach to continuing to show up and provide support and help to a student or even a peer who is struggling to take the next steps toward their goals?
Yeah, I think it's really important to be consistent. Making sure that they are feeling supported and validated in what their emotions are is great. Taking the next step, whether it's changing careers or not knowing if you want to change your major, is really important, and just being a listening ear. In the mental health space, when we do work, we really talk about two different approaches in terms of showing up with care and empathy, and then also nonverbal communication is really important. So I think I am hyper fixated on that sometimes, because showing up means listening sometimes, and then being a resource when needed. And if you don't have a direct answer, connecting them to who maybe does. And I've experienced this both with students and staff, right? Like, I love connecting people with my peers who are either in higher education or have made the transition out of higher education to corporate, because they have a lot of valuable insight. So I think it's really about showing up consistently and empathetically, and also being your vulnerable and authentic self.